We got one more. This one was one we combined from parts found on Craigslist from two quads. And last November we got it running in the cold weather, but it has always struggled once it got warm, and I believe it's too lean. So this is the last one to fix up, and then everything has been rebuilt, should be running all right. Starting to feel like fall out here. It's August 16th and 70 degrees and dry, like 40% humidity. Real change in temperature. So we have been doing some riding around down in New Hampshire with my brother and sister-in-law, my nieces and nephews. This is the same model as the baby quad. This is a 3050C, 110cc China Quad. See if I can find the plate on it, find out if this is a Coolster name brand or a Tao name brand. It is a Coolster name brand. So last Thanksgiving Day is when we pulled this one together. Did some work, and there's still some leftover pieces of our handiwork here, like the exhaust hanger. And you know, frankly, that might be one of the reasons this is running really lean, is there could be a big air leak right up in front here. If I move the exhaust, you see all that play around the head intake. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to start by taking the body off. I'm going to take the footwells off here, pull the body up. I want to be able to get the back of the exhaust there, do some work to actually hang that exhaust appropriately. It looks like the first order of business is there's nothing to hang this exhaust on. There's nothing to attach a nut to, so I think a little bit of grinding, weld a little piece here so we can clamp this is probably step one. Front of these is always a little challenging to get off, as they have self-tapping Phillips screws up under here, here, and they can be tough to get at. So there's one, two. We didn't put the third one back in all the way up there because there's just no way to get a screwdriver in. There we go. So you have 1, 2, 3, and actually forgot even 4, which would be right up under here, and just no way to get a screwdriver in here. And even these ones are almost impossible. So I've been using just these front screws. On the baby quad, what I actually did is made a cut right here. So to get the plastics off, you can just with a cut feed the whole plastic right off the back, rather than trying to get it up and over the handlebars, and that's worked really well. The other thing I like doing, I mean, as much as you don't like seeing zip ties, but instead of these screws, a zip tie or two to hold this piece on makes working on these much easier if you have to get the body off. Got to pull the battery to get the body off. There's our battery. So now the question, can I get this body up and off without taking the handlebars off? And the reality is I don't believe I can unless I make a little snip in the front here. Alrighty. So there just isn't enough clearance to get the handlebar through at any angle here without a little slice. If I make that, I can slide it right off. I don't have to take all this off, loosen all these bolts, tuck it in. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a little slice here, make my life easier. Right in the center. Now when I need to take this off, so now just like that, with that little slice, I can pull this off here. We'll still secure it underneath here, and I can always put a zip tie right back in there if I needed to. And this whole structure here holds it pretty solid. All right, so now we can see what we're looking at a little better here. All looks nice and clean. There's some rust we'll want to touch on. Hit that with some paint. Grommet seems to be pulled down here, rubber grommet for the rear hydraulic. But you can see that actuating there. So this is where we're going to start. This here's our challenge. Let's find a piece of metal I can clean up and weld right there. Oh, got a scrap bin. Oh, you know what? I think we're going to be in luck here. This looks pretty good.
There's a frog under this, so don't let her get it.
That's not what I expected. I think that is going to be a baby yellow spotted salamander, not the green newts that start in the pond. He's different.
Like the woods?
Yep, he'll go live under rotted logs and things like that. Alright, so I put a little bevel on here, cleaned off all the finish. Nice new metal. I do a little more grinding here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fix the exhaust with a bolt. I think it'll be easier to hold the exhaust where I want for the weld than try to hold the little piece in place here. Let's see if I'm right about that. You know, that doesn't look too bad. Alright, exhaust is tight. Tighten this down. I think that weld's going to be alright. We're going to hit that with some paint, but at least now I can speak with some level of confidence that I don't have an air leak right at the head. Okay, fuel is on, battery is connected. See if she wants to start. I actually don't know if the battery got anything in it. It's pulling down a lot of charge. You know, I can turn the key on all day, but if it's not plugged in, it won't matter. Okay, now the key is plugged in. Let's turn it on. Do we get any crank? There we go. So I just was able to stall it out by putting my thumb over the exhaust. So I do believe I've got a good tight system. Start it back up here. I didn't grab any before footage of it. It was just so tough to ride. It started and idled just fine and all that, but when you got under throttle, there was just no power and it ran really hot. So I made the assumption of an air leak. I made the assumption that it was running lean without checking, but with that exhaust kind of hanging, it wasn't tight up front. I think it's a good first step. No air leaks, but still really underperforms wide open throttle. So we gotta look at the jets on here. I think before I open up the carb, I'm gonna let it sit, cool down for a little bit. Feels lean, hanging RPMs. Yeah, hanging RPMs and almost like a delayed acceleration. Doesn't feel like a bog, just all of a sudden it ignites and it's like, there's a struggle. Things have cooled down now, so let's get into this carburetor. So I have a number of different types of jets. I believe that is a key-in style carb, so I think that's going to be these main jets. Let's get that opened up and find out what jet's in there, where the needle's set, all of those things. Alright, this needle is set at factory. Set at factory, right in the middle. We're going to keep it there. Now I'm going to take off the carb by taking off these two 10mm bolts, and I'll unhook the fuel line right here. Then it should slip right out, and then we'll take it into the shed, open it up, and see what the jets are at. And today's bonus, there's enough fuel line for me to slide this out, then pull the fuel line off instead of trying to do it under the body. So here we are. Main jets under here. Main jets under there. There's our pilot, our idle jet. Starting and idling fine. I'm not going to touch that. It's not overflowing fuel out through the overflow needle. So I know my float is fine. It's turning off at the right point. So I'm going after the main jet here. This carb is nice and clean inside. I can see right through the hole there. So it's tough to see, but there are 5 holes, 5 holes, 5 holes, 5 holes. And if I hold it up to the light, I can see all the way through. 10 of those holes in one way, 10 of those holes the other way. I can see straight through, so this is clean. So here's our jet. It's an 80. Let's see what we have. Maybe like an 85 or something closer to an 87. Another unmarked. The unmarked ones are factory. Here's an 85. Well, you know, I may have to do a couple of tests here. Putting in an 85 main jet for this next test. So some of these carbs come with these spacers that will go between the carburetor, you know, and the intake manifold. What's interesting on this one is this inner diameter is much bigger than the intake diameter on the carb. A little tough to see, but it's really not even close, and I wonder if that makes some kind of a weird pocket of the gases coming in. I'm gonna look in my other carbs for a few minutes here, see if I have another gasket that is more appropriately sized. So in a box with a PZ20, If you see the difference here, too big difference. That is perfect. So this one off the PZ20, that diameter sitting on there is perfect. All right, it's a bit better with the 85 main jet. Certainly getting more power out of it, but it's not right yet. Still some burping. Better at wide open throttle. Mid-range still a little rough. I'm probably going to play with the needle a little bit, but I'm also going to try going to that 90 main jet just to see. The 80 was way too lean. I have an 85 in there. I don't have an 87 in my kit. So the next size is a 90, so I'm going to try that and kind of keep stepping in from there. But for now, I'm going to park it, enjoy some of the afternoon, have a cup of coffee, and I'll come back to it later. All right, I'm back. It's cooled down, so now let's try a size 90 main jet. Yep, I've decided it is nice having a little bit longer fuel line because it's easy just to slide the carb out here without taking the top off and the fuel line off. It just makes it easier to work on all of this. Toit like a toiga. Guess we gotta ride it to find out. So I like this 90 main jet at wide open throttle. Idle first 10-20% of throttle is good. Last 80 to 100 is good. Middle still has got some dead spots. What I don't know is if I should raise or lower the needle for the mid-range. If I lower the needle, I'll lean it out. If I raise the needle, I'll richen it. So far, the performance has improved as I've richened things from an 80 main to an 85 main to a 90 main jet. I think factory is somewhere around an 87, but they don't come marked. I'm on the factory setting for the needle. I'm going to raise the needle one clip. I don't know which way to go. There we are, factory setting right in the middle. I'm going to move this clip up one. Excuse me, I'm going to move the clip down one, which will keep the needle up a little higher, which will richen it out in the mid-range of the throttle. Get my little retaining clip in here. Down flush. And I got to spin it because right now I can't get the cable in. Turn that retainer just a little bit. Ta-da! Now I can put the cable right in there. All right, let's try it again. Well, that actually affected top end. I wasn't expecting that to affect the wide open throttle. It felt smoother through the mid-range, but wide open was kind of just a surging, just revving up and then struggling, then revving up. It felt more like I was flooding out the top range now when I smoothed out the middle. So, and I wasn't sure which way to go with that needle, so I'm gonna, I'm now one below, so I've richened it. I can go back to factory one up, which will lean it, go the other direction. The other option, if that doesn't change anything, is I go back to the 85 main jet, and then I drop the E-clip on the needle to raise the needle by one. So I richen out the mid-range a little bit, but take a little bit off the main jet, and see if I can hit the balance that way. These little carbs shouldn't be this tough. A leaner mid-range. You know, I'm starting to nitpick. That's not perfect either. And that one even starts to feel the lean symptoms, and I can smell things getting hot pretty quick there. I'm going to go back to the factory setting on the needle. I'm going to leave it with a 90 main. I think an 87 main is probably the sweet spot, but I don't have an 87 main. We started at an 80 and that was way off. 85 wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the smoothest. And 90 is just a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. So yeah, I'm going to put that needle back to factory. We'll leave it with a 90. The only other thing I could do is I do have the factory main jet to put back in there. It's unmarked. Let's try that as well. We'll go back to factory needle. We'll put the factory main jet back in there. The unmarked, maybe an 85, maybe an 87, maybe who knows. Let's see what that looks like. Because the other thing to consider, when we pulled the factory jet and we're looking to change it out, I don't think we had a good seal at the exhaust header there, and that could have thrown everything off. Here we go. I may have to let this cool again. That's a pretty hot carb. Well, I can tell you one thing. Whatever that factory main jet is, that unmarked one, it sucks. That just robs this thing of a third of its power. Wide open throttle, and it is just way too lean. So I think that's enough for now. I think I'm going to get my hands on an 87 jet. Plug that in and see. And if no luck with an 87 main jet on the PZ22, well then I can put an OEM carb back on there. These come with a 20mm, a PZ20 carb. This is a 22mm, the PZ22. And usually I have really tough luck with a PZ20. But this PZ22 is just fighting me on this guy. So I'll park it there for today. I'll get my hands on an 87 main jet. So, for another day.